Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the artist of comics like the recently completed graphic novella series November at Image, and the star of her own YouTube channel about studying comics. It's Elsa Charretier. Thanks for coming on, Elsa.
Hi, thank you for having me, David.
So, we're here to talk about your new YouTube channel and the conclusion of November and an array of other things, I'm sure. But I wanted to start with what's been going on since we last talked, because incredibly, we last talked, our last podcast arrived on March 1st, 2020. We did a chat for Sketch since then, but the world has changed a little bit since then. What's the last year been like in France?
It's been indoor. Yeah, most of us have stayed isolated. So in that sense, it's just like for you guys, it's pretty much the same. And we've been working.
Yeah.
Just like everyone else. Yeah, we haven't been able to travel or go see friends or do conventions or signings. So we spend all of our time at home in our studio working.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not complaining at all. We've had it easy, honestly. We live in the countryside, so we didn't have to deal with the major like COVID outbreaks or stuff like that. We've been very careful, and we miss our friends.
Yeah.
You know, after a while, I'm kind of lonely. I tend to be like a kind of lonely person, isolated most of the time. But an entire year and more than that right now, without seeing anyone, it's starting to feel long.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to get into the YouTube and the whys and everything like that. But I do think one thing I've kind of discovered, or I've learned from talking to other people and everything, is a lot of people have found, like, I don't want to say an answer to like the loneliness and like the separation and everything like that, because there's no real answer besides like being around people. But things like your YouTube or like podcasts or things like that, feeling like you're kind of forming a connection with a person who you have a shared interest in. I wonder if in some ways, even though it's not really solving your problem, like I wonder if your YouTube series is kind of providing that for people a little bit, where it's just like you're sharing a passion with this person who's very good at this type of thing.
It's human connection. It's not palpable. You know, we're not seeing each other IRL, but it is another form of connection. So definitely, and when you provide, like we're trying to do, content for people who are passionate about something, but that may also feel isolated during those hard times, I think it helps. That's not why we did it in the first place, but I think it's in some level it helps us and other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know that you're the type of person who, like, I remember when we talked last time, it was about your art books, or like your first art book Kickstarter, I believe. And one of the reasons you did it was effectively you just wanted to learn more about InDesign and how to make all of that happen, how to like bring one of these projects to life. And yeah. I'm not saying that this like makes up for the fact that, you know, everyone has to be separated and everything like that. But you seem like a very curious person. And I have to imagine that you've used your time to, well, I mean, clearly you launched an entire YouTube series, but I have to imagine you use your time pretty productively, I guess. Like, I imagine you've learned new things.
I try to. But honestly, most of the time we stay, like pre-pandemic, we stay at home and we work. But we do go to the States like 2 or 3 times a year for a couple of weeks. So that amount of time we had on our hands this year. Mm-hmm. We could have taken a vacation, which was originally the plan. But I can't take a vacation. I found I would like very much so, but I'm not capable of not doing anything, apparently. So that's why the Kickstarter campaign for this year was that I stopped to take a vacation. And then I was so bored out of my mind, and I was apparently very hard to live with during those couple of days. So Pierrick, my partner, who created the art studio with me, like urged me to find something to do.
That's amazing.
Which I did, and so I decided to do another art book, and we launched the campaign and then the YouTube channel, so that to ensure that I have zero spare time on my hand, because I quickly feel like a lion in a cage.
One thing I learned when I was researching for this is I think Google has caught on to your I don't restless nature, maybe your endlessly desiring of new projects nature. When you actually type in your name into Google and it comes up with its instant results, and you know how like it's like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
and
yeah.
then like
What does it
tacos and
say?
this. It's the first five that came up were Kickstarter, YouTube, original art book, and Twitter. And there was like literally nothing about your comic projects, despite the fact that you made a Star Wars comic, which is like you have somehow defeated Star Wars, which is something I don't think many people have done. And I don't know. I do think it does underline how diverse your interests and projects are. Is that something you're always looking to do? Like, are you just a curious person who's always looking to like build those new skills and take on new projects?
Yeah, I'm curious. It's something that I don't know, it's ingrained. I've always been very curious, and even more so since I've started comics, because I found something that interested me and channeled my energy. Because when you have energy and passion and no project to put it into, it's really hard. You can feel restless. But comics, and especially the kind of comics and career that I want for myself, which is outside of the work for hire realm, allows me to do what I want.
Hmm.
I feel like doing this or that. I can just do this or that. And it keeps me motivated. It keeps me on my toes. It keeps me interested. And I'm very, it's something that is both good and bad, like most things about people. The quality about someone is sometimes a thing that makes them really hard to live with. Is that I am terrified of doing the same thing over and over again. Doing the same thing even twice terrifies me.
Hmm.
So I feel like I have this need to always try new things and push my own boundaries and come up with new interesting takes on comics and all of that. And it's an obsession. I wouldn't say that it's healthy. It's just how it is. I work too much. I don't rest enough. I just don't know any other way.
I mean, it's that's kind of like the nature for people who are great at things, I think, to a certain degree. It's like, I don't know, I'm a huge sports guy, and there was this documentary last year about Michael Jordan, the basketball player, and he was basically the whole thing was just talking about how great he was and also how like inseparable from being insufferable that was, where
Yeah.
he just was like, and I'm not saying you're insufferable by any ways, you're very nice
No, no,
to
but
talk to.
I'm okay from a distance.
But those things are kind of connected. But I do also want to say one thing that is connected to this is like, your desire to always want to make things look their very best. And a good example of that came up yesterday on your social media feeds, where you shared your process of stamping on your Kickstarter projects, and you had like something looks really good when Daniel Warren Johnson is asking you how you're doing that, or like how you got that custom stamp.
That was very nice, I
Yeah.
have to say.
But I mean, I think that's great because it's, wherever that comes from in you, it results in like, it's like a product you can trust is going to be its very best self. And I think that's a very good thing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I am very lucky to be partnering up, sorry, with Pierrick, who's a perfectionist in the true sense of the word. And by that, I mean like obsessing if something is not perfect, even though no one is going to notice, or be bothered by it. He just have to do it
Hmm.
perfectly. So everything that you see, if you look at the YouTube channel and everyone is coming up to me and saying, "Oh my God, the production value of this channel is incredible." And it's not me. I do my text. I do I go where he tells me to go, and then I speak. But everything, the camera, the whole background, the lighting, all of this is him, and it's flawless because he's a perfectionist. So we work well together because I do a lot, but I can be a little bit sloppy sometimes. I'll tend to rush some things, but the good thing is that he's here with me to like flag some things. What, oh, this is not up to the standards, so either you redo it or. And I'm very glad to have him like watching my back. So the two of us do a pretty good team, I think.
That's a good combination.
Mm,
So
yeah.
is he editing?
Yeah, he does everything. Yeah, it's incredible. It's a huge amount of work, and he does it so well. Like, I'm in awe every week.
It's honestly upsettingly good because I've tried to edit video before and it's just terrible. And like seeing the stuff that you all are putting out, I mean, even just like the EC in the beginning, I watched that and I'm just like, I wish that any aspect of any of my videos looked that good. So I'm very upset with him.
That logo is actually from Tom Mueller.
Oh, is it?
The Yeah, when we decided to launch a channel, like, I can't do a logo. I'm not a designer. Let's hire Tom. That's it's going back to what I was saying earlier. We can't do anything not too much. It always have to be too much. But I'm glad the logo looks fantastic.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Well, the animation with it too. I will say, like, I'm not gonna say I'm on your same level, but when I was looking for a new logo for my podcast, I actually reached out to Tom too. So great minds. I mean, if you're gonna go for a logo, you might as well go with the best, right?
Yeah. Is your panel logo Tom's?
No, no, I ended up not going that direction because I am a monster. But I went with like a local designer who is very, very good. But at the same time,
Oh, yeah. I love your logo. It's great.
Tom's a genius, and I mean, it's also great too because it's like Tom has a real, he has a real connection to comics himself. So it's just like if you're gonna
Hmm.
make a comic channel and you go with a designer, going with somebody who has a real connection to comics makes a lot of
Oh,
sense.
and I should tell you something about the logo that you might not have caught on because it's subtle. The E and the C, so you have a square around the E and then a round circle around the C. So first of all, that fits the first letters of my name, but it's also a reference to comics. The first square is a panel and the circle is a balloon.
Oh,
So, it's super subtle, but oh my God, when I saw the PDF with the notes, I was like, he's a genius. That is perfect.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
God, always surprising that guy. Well, us talk about the YouTube channel. It's you're breaking down the storytelling of comics and new videos each Friday at 9 a.m. EST, and I mean, it seems to have started very well. Like you're kind of connecting a lot of different audiences on it. It seems, and people are really enjoying it. I mean, that first Hawkeye video, I swear to God, like I couldn't escape it. And I mean that in a good way, but it was just showing up everywhere on social media. Why was doing a YouTube channel like this something you wanted to do, and what are you looking to do on there going forward?
It's really hard to pin down and to remember why we do the things that we do because it's always that we pile on each other. I'll go and say something, and then Pierrick will say, "Oh, let's do this and that," and then myself, and we add things. And when I reflect back and try to remember what was the original idea and why we decided to do the YouTube channel, it's hard to remember. The one thing that I know is that during the Kickstarter campaign, one of our stretch goals was a convention at home because it was during the pandemic and people were um, sad of not being able to go to conventions and talk to artists and have sketches and all of that. And so we decided to launch a 2-day event online where I sketched. I had guests. I had Tom King, Declan Chalvey, I took questions, and basically we had an exchange and a conversation with the people that had backed the Kickstarter. And that went so well, and people were so happy with that interaction that we thought, why not just do a YouTube channel where we can go in depth about the things that I, barely talked about during the live event, like sequential storytelling and how do you balance out a panel and all of those things that I couldn't really talk about in depth during the live. But we decided, okay, let's do something like an educational channel about the craft of comics, because there isn't, to my knowledge, a channel that did that existed. So that was the idea at first, and then it ballooned into something. It ballooned up into like what it is now, which is like videos every Friday, and we go in depth into many aspects of comics, and we have lots of surprises to come. We're just in a fifth week, I think, fifth week. And so far, I've done a couple of case studies, a book club reviews where I talk about a specific book that I liked. What did we do? Yeah, an adaptation of
Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, and the idea is to do like recurring videos on that theme, to take a work of fiction and then adapt it into a comic book page. And like you said, with the Reservoir Dogs at first. But the thing is, what kind of directed us into that direction was that as a creator, as an artist that wants to improve, I do that on my own time, take books that I like and try to understand the structure and why does it work, why does it not work. And I did that for myself. So it was just a matter of like putting it into going into more depth than I would have for myself, and send it out there for people to maybe enjoy and learn things from.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you had mentioned how this kind of came from the convention at home idea. And that makes a lot of sense to me, because just looking at your YouTube, it feels like an extension of everything else you're doing to a certain degree, because it was like, you were drawing comics, and then you were also writing comics, and then you were also, making art books, and you were running Kickstarters. And it kind of seemed like you had like this voracious appetite, like this, like I said, the curiosity before. And it's like, a YouTube channel of this nature is an excellent manifestation of it, because from your latest video, the one where you were asking for support in making these videos, you said every day of your life from dawn to dusk, you think about comics. And, people need outlets for that type of thinking, for things like that, and finding somebody to share that with. And a YouTube channel is a perfect solution for that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And what you said about, that everything seems to connect. Naturally, it does, because it stems from our passion, and we do that ourselves. So we put a lot of our personalities and what we love and how we do things into each of those projects. So naturally, it kind of it feels like everything is connected. And I like to think of the channel as the I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of it, but when you have a series, a TV show, and then they're doing kind of anyway, forget about it.
A spin-off?
A spin-off, yeah. Thank you. I couldn't find the word. So in that sense, the YouTube channel is kind of a spin-off of the art books, where I can show things that I can't show in an art book, although I try to be very educational in the art books as well.
Yo, everybody, I want to take a quick second to talk about the crew over at Bad Idea. Do you like bone-shredding destruction, wanton corporate malfeasance, and reckless use of industrial machinery? Then buckle up because Bad Idea, the unruly and experimental new comic book publisher, is back with Tankers. On sale in select comic shops now from New York Times best-selling writer Robert Venditti and blockbuster artist Juan Jose Rip. A global energy conglomerate has just solved our impending oil shortage, and their plan is pretty simple. Send a team of contractors armed to the teeth in mech suits back to the Cretaceous period, tweak the trajectory of the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, and give mankind another 500 millennia worth of oil reserves. What could go wrong? Only all of human history, of course. Tankers from Bad Idea, on sale in select comic shops now. And now, back to the show. The fact that you can show yourself and you can speak to it and you can also have motion elements and things like that. I mean, it is really interesting seeing how you and Pierre treat like the varying topics you take on. The case studies you treat completely differently than the Reservoir Dogs one, where the Reservoir Dogs one, you actually narrate as you're working at, like, I believe like a Cintiq. And then there's like, during that, you can actually see up on the wall of your studio the work that you're doing at times. And it is kind of interesting because it's like each kind of has like slightly different treatments. And, actually related to that, was that, is that part of you two kind of feeling out exactly how you want to bring these videos to life? Or was that a deliberately different treatment for Reservoir Dogs because the subject was different?
It's a deliberately different because we want them to feel like to have sort of a series feel about each of them. The case studies have a very specific look, and the directing is the same, the editing is the same. The book clubs are very different, where it's more kind of a lounge, comfortable, where I speak about a book, kind of relaxing. And the 10-minute layouts series, where the Reservoir Dog is probably always going to look like that, where I'm at desk and I sketch out the page and then I explain what I do in a voiceover. So we want to create that feeling of series because it's something that, as a viewer of or subscriber of YouTube channels, I like that feeling. Oh, there's another one of those videos that I like so much. Yeah, it's comfortable, going back to something that and it is always the same, but feels a little bit different each time also. So that is a deliberate choice, yeah. And also, we try to go with a directing and editing style that would fit the show. I wouldn't be able to have such a comfortable setting while breaking down a page, for example. The book clubs have to be different than the case studies. It would make sense to have them too similar.
Mm-hmm. Bringing Tom back into this is we're going full circle with Tom. But when he was on the podcast, I remember talking to him about how, because he's a designer and he worked in agencies and things like that. When he walks around and when he looks at things, he cannot help but look at the world as a designer. Like, that's just something that he does. It just influences his everyday thinking. Is what you're doing on the YouTube show, when you're looking at like Mazzucchelli or Aha or whomever, like when you're looking at their art, is that just kind of how your brain is wired anyways? Like, you're just, when you look at a comic, you can't help but kind of break them down as you read them as well?
Not really, and I'm very glad for it because that allows me to enjoy the work as a reader. Yeah, it's something that I remember talking about that with Pierrick, who studied cinema, and he can't watch a movie without being taken out of the story because he can understand the lightning, understand this and that. And so that kind of spoils a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you're not in the story, you see the behind the scenes. And as a reader, of course, there are some things that I see, but I'm very happy that I still have this ability or to not see everything until I really start thinking about it. So the works that I did, the videos that we did on David Aja's panel for Hawkeye, for example, I knew as a reader that this panel was perfect, constructed so well, and the flow of information was very well and carefully thought through. But I had to do this video and take some time to analyze it, and I found out things as I went. I discovered things that I hadn't seen at first glance as a reader. So that's why I also like doing this channel, is that I learn things as I do them.
That's awesome. I mean, honestly, like I think that's the root of a lot of good content. I mean, not this is going to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but it's like a lot of the stuff I do.
Please do.
A lot of the stuff I do with like the podcast and with my site is I'm trying to answer questions that are in my head. And so by answering those questions, it's like if I can sufficiently answer it for me, that would be interesting. I hope that'll be interesting for other people. And when you're trying to break down this page and you're learning stuff too, I mean, frankly, like you know more about art than pretty much damn near all of us do. And so if you're learning things on it, we're really going to be learning things.
There is a quote. I don't know if you're familiar with Meisner, who's an acting coach, that I studied because I studied acting a while back. And he said, if you are interested in something, you will look interesting. And I think that's very true. If you're passionate about something, if you're passionate about doing or talking about something, you will look interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that makes sense what you say.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm curious as to why you started with what you started with. We're going to ignore Reservoir Dogs for now, but from a comic standpoint, Batman Year One, Hawkeye, Day Tripper. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of those artists, but what made those the comics you initially wanted to focus on?
Oh, excellent question. I think that part of it was trying to be smart about launching a YouTube channel and selecting books that people know about,
Mm-hmm.
rather than maybe some other fantastic book that I will study down the line, but that will maybe not catch viewers' eyes because they don't know about it. So that was part that, and part, those are my favorite books.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, I want to talk about them first. As simple as that.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I love those books. I mean, Batman Year One, actually just really anything by Mazzucchelli, I could just, if you want to just do an entire series about him, I'd be more than happy to watch all
Yes,
of them.
but he will be back. I will break down other of his works because his books are so different from one to the next that there are so many different things to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say that I think that you clearly made the right pick with Hawkeye, because that seemed like it, like I said before, it really blew up. But one other thing that seems to be on the horizon is Ed Brubaker noted that he is doing he did an interview with you.
He did?
Did he? Did I make that up?
Where? Yes, he did. How do you know that?
He said it in his newsletter.
Oh, he sent it out. Oh God. Okay.
He said that he did an interview with you. It's not up yet, but that he recommended everybody checks out your channel, and
yeah, we did.
Okay, well, good. Well, anyways, I am interested in will interviews and conversations with your peers be a big part of this, or of everything you do going forward? Will that be like another wrinkle amongst the other ones?
It will. Yes. Because just like yourself, I have questions that are in my head and things I would love to ask my favorite artists. And the YouTube channel is a fantastic excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely we had Ed for the first one, and I'm very glad we got to talk about the craft of writing comics. Structure, character, narration, all of that. Every interview, of course, they have books to promote, and I want to promote those books too, but through the prism of the craft. So we talked about narration in Reckless, his new book with Sean Phillips, and structure and all of this. It was very interesting. I'm excited for people to hear it.
I'm very interested to see how you visualize this one. I mean, I'm not saying that narration cannot be visualized, but at the same time, it's like the combination of writing and then also a YouTube channel is just it's kind of funny to me. But I know how you can do it, but it's just like I don't know. It's funny. I'm going to be talking to Ed, I believe, soon. And there's this one section that I'm dying to. Have you read the new Reckless book, Friend of the Devil?
The second one, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
No.
No, there's this. I'm not going to get into it, but there's this one section where I feel like every artist would be terribly envious of Sean Phillips for having like 6 straight pages in this certain capacity. But well,
Oh, okay.
let's just
I
say
have plans
there's not a
for
lot
next
of
year.
drawing in it.
Yeah, okay, like okay, I see what you mean.
Okay, so I did, looking at it on a global view, like you have all these different things going on. I'm interested in you have you have your art books, you have your Patreon, which we're going to get into here in a second. You're in some ways it's uh, not to make it sound like very capitalistic, but you're kind of evolving into like a maybe a slightly different type of content creator where you have like all these different things feeding into the whole. I don't know if this is necessarily true or that like comics are kind of stepping back at all, but do you feel like in some ways you're trying to reframe your career almost, or is this really just like a secondary interest that just spawns from the work of comics?
You're a smart one, you know that. It is in some level, yeah. But first of all, I hurt my drawing hand about a year and a half ago, so I can still draw, and I plan on still being a comic book artist because that's what I love to do. I wouldn't be happy just doing the YouTube channel and the Patreon. I need to draw, but I can draw a little less. So I have a bit more free time to do those things. So that's also why we did the YouTube channel. I knew that I had like a week or week and a half, a month where I couldn't draw because I had to let my hand rest.
Hmm.
So that's first like very pragmatic concern, my health. And the second one was, and you're not wrong, and you're actually quite kind of right about what you said about reframing, is that my goal from the beginning has been to be as independent as possible, to be able to tell the stories that I want to tell, to be able to not take this job because it doesn't interest me, because I have other sources of income. So there is that. You're just much more free when when your work is distributed in a way on different platforms. And it turns out that we do different things, videos and art books and all of that, but everything feeds into our company, our publishing company, and that allows you to us to do what we want when we want to do it. And also, I like the idea of not being seen as a creator exclusively, but also as an entrepreneur, because that's also something that I have a big interest in.
Hmm. I think that are you familiar with Jen Bartel, the artist?
I am. She's
Yeah.
doing that too.
Yeah, well, I had this conversation with a couple of creators at a convention a couple years back, and I remember like explicitly saying basically I think like Jen is like one of the smartest creators out there, and it's because Jen is so smart about how she approaches promoting her work but also selling her work, like through like prints and through merchandising and through doing all these other things, that when comics people come to her she doesn't need to say yes, she can say
Yeah.
no, and she has a complete control over what she does or doesn't do. To a certain degree, everyone has that. But Jen has handled it in a way that, you know, I don't know anything about, her financial situation or anything, but she's at least somewhat insulated from the
Yeah.
needs of taking on projects that don't satisfy her. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed that about her. I think she was very smart when her work starting to like her career to like really blew up. She was very smart. She branched out immediately And that was very smart of her because she could have just taken the DC and the Marvel jobs that she was offered and not try to build an audience just for herself, not necessarily an audience that is attached to the book that she's working on. And she did that, and that was extremely smart because, like you said, every creator theoretically has the opportunity to say no. But come on, when you have to eat and when you have to keep a roof over your head, it's not really your choice. You have to work to get money. Work is offered to you. If you have no other choice than to take it, even though you're not really into that project, you take it. And that is, after years and years of doing that, you really run the risk of just losing interest. And I wanted to avoid that at all cost. Because I think as a creator, really being able to take the jobs that you really like is important. Lots of um, older artists or the previous generation will tell you that is a very millennial thing to say. I only want to do what I want, what I like. That sometimes you have to do the things you don't like because such is life. I strongly disagree with that. I think that sometimes you have no other choice, and when you got to do what you got to do. But I don't think it should be how you go about things, like uh, as a first instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very happy to be able to like say no to things that I don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is this is not me casting aspersions about artists from a previous generation, but the thing is like all of them know, a lot of them know firsthand that when the style changes, when like the accepted style changes, or like when maybe your version of comics is old hat and they're not interested in your style anymore, all of a sudden you're out of work and you have no control of that. And if you have your own little pie cut out of like the larger pie, your little slice taken out of it, you have a Patreon and you have this YouTube channel and you have art books and you have these things that protects you from the whims and the winds of the comic book industry that shifts constantly. Like, you have no control of that. Why rely on it?
Most definitely. And something else is that when you branch out like that and you really are conscious about building an audience for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
people, especially in comics, and that has always blown my mind, are extremely faithful. It's incredible. I see people that are still backing my books to this day that started like 7 years ago, lots of them. And they come back because you've created that connection with them, because you provided content outside of the books that you're doing. And so when you build that community, I want to say, and I'm not talking about the Twitter following. That is entirely different.
Mm-hmm.
To me, a Twitter following is not a community because you don't really engage. Well, you engage in a I don't know. I feel it's different. It's entirely different.
It's a little bit more superficial. Like, you're talking about the
Yeah,
passionate fans, like the ones who
I
are like
wanted to say
supporting everything.
superficial. I wasn't sure about the word, but since you went ahead and said it, but yeah, when you really engage with people, and especially with Kickstarter, where you can express your love for those people, your the fact that you feel grateful about their support, you can express it in a very tangible way by sending them packages that are going to be incredible. And when you do that, you do a little bit more than you were asked to do or that you could have done. People will follow you to the end of the world because they appreciate it. And so you can't do that when you only do your DC or your Marvel book every month. It's a different career, it's a different approach, but I feel like in the times that we live in, as creators, it is almost mandatory to step outside of that work for hire comfort.
Yeah. Well, and one other thing I want to say about like those kind of passionate supporters is like those people also become like your evangelists, like your biggest supporters, and they tell other people about it. And like that's, I mean, imagine that's how that's how Kickstarters grow. Is like, you know, you have your established base, and then they pass it on to other people. I very vividly remember this. I was late to getting on to your new art book, which is terrible because we literally did an interview on it, and I like you had a limited amount of sketches you were going to do, and I went in and I was in the process of getting the very last one, and as I pressed like order or whatever the button is, it said sold out, and I was like, damn it. And I tweeted about it, and a little bit later, Michael Perlman, who is a big art collector and a
Yeah,
huge fan of comics, he tweeted me and said, "One's open again. Go get it." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
I remember that.
And I
Yeah,
got
there
it.
is. Yeah, it's a real community. It's incredible. You know, I come from the entertainment industry when it's everyone for themselves.
Hmm.
So comics could not be different, more different. And it's like you said, it's how Kickstarters grow from one to the next. It's how Patreon grows. It's just how everything, as long as you show people that you appreciate their support, like genuinely, not out of interest, and that you provide them with incredible books or products or whatever it is that you're selling, they will follow you. And like you said, they will tell their friends.
Yo, everybody. I want to take a quick second to give a shout out to Macroverse. Macroverse is an exciting digital comics platform that makes next gen comics custom crafted for your phone. Macroverse's comics utilize its unique tap story format, which ensures this isn't a PDF on an iPad or an endless scroll, but a designed for mobile experience where every episode is crafted to take advantage of this one of a kind style. Macroverse is curated for quality, with every series they publish being something they believe deserves to be read by a massive audience. Think of it like HBO for comics, with over 35 titles and 400 episodes from names like Brian Stelfreeze, Juan Doe, Paul Scheer, and more. Check out Macroverse today by downloading the app on iOS or Google Play and get started with a rotating collection of free episodes or unlock the entire universe for just $4.99 a month, with half of all profits going to the creators themselves. And now, back to the show. Let's talk about the Patreon because that's obviously a natural extension of this. What made that something you wanted to add on top of the YouTube channel? Was it strictly just like, you know, YouTube channels are not super easy to generate support through because it's view generated, or is it more of like having a central hub for that passionate fan base?
It is so we never intended to make money with the YouTube channel. That was not the goal. And I don't think if it were, I don't think it's really attainable because comics are still a niche. Even though we end up having a very successful channel, it's still a niche. And it's especially in France, it's very different. The laws are different for like the revenues that you make on YouTube. You make a lot less, like four times less, something like that. So it's really hard to make a living out of YouTube here. And that was not the plan at all. But we do have some costs related to it. First of all, we pay someone to translate every video into French. So that's a lot of money.
For the subtitles?
Yeah, for the subtitles because I'm French and my first campaign were funded here in France. I would feel very ungrateful to have a content that is not available to every French person. So we have that, and also the gear that we buy. All of this is very, very expensive. So we use a lot of our leftover Kickstarter money for that. But you know, continuing. We have more and more expenses. So the idea was also to cover some of those expenses. And also, we found out that Pierrick is spending like he's almost like full time now on this because he wanted to take a step back from writing, wanted to do something different. And so his job is now the YouTube channel. So it feels also right for him to be able to make a living out of this.
Yeah.
So there's that. And like you said, it's also like a hub. It centralized everything. It's easier, much easier to have a connection with people. when you post a Patreon post and you can exchange with people, you can message them, all of that. It's much more, it's easier than on YouTube, like you said. It's not made to be a community, really.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
YouTube comment channels or YouTube comments are normally like houses of horror. So like having a contained environment is normally pretty good. Actually, I did look at some of the comments in yours. It does seem like people are pretty happy, which is unusual.
so
So
far,
good luck.
yes. Embracing myself for those terrible comments that are coming.
Well,
I know they are.
well, I will say that like looking. I told you before I started recording that anyone who has a Patreon secretly looks at other Patreons for ideas because it's just like there's only so many different ways to do this, but sometimes like new ideas come out. I will say you have a very smart reward for your $6 tier and up, and that's that you can cut in line for original art, which I have to imagine is like a huge carrot for people because
It's a big draw. Yeah.
it's a big draw. Yeah, I mean original art. I'm sure you do know this. It's during the pandemic has exploded. Like it's just
Yeah.
like really, really blowing up in interest, and like having that foot in the door is, I don't know, that's a huge draw.
It is, and like you said, every Patreon is just about the same. The tiers are the 1 level tier, the 5, the 10.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing the same, but also it's the smart way to go about the tiers, the levels of support. That's why I think everyone is doing them. But yeah, I did a lot of research and I looked at what people were doing, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, what we could do different.
Hmm.
Like you said, to try and differentiate ourselves from everyone else. So the early access and the being able to cut in line is a big draw, and the postcards that we are doing as well, the
Oh
mini
my God.
prints.
Those are the best.
Yeah, I love doing prints, and I really get a chance to do them. But the idea is to do those smaller, like postcard size, and selling them out every month to people that have subscribed or pledged to that tier. I think it's the 5 or 6 level tier. And we like go crazy with the postcards. This month has like a 3D gloss varnish. It looks gorgeous. It doesn't make any sense, like financially speaking. It costs a lot of money, but it is just so beautiful. I think people are gonna love it. I love as a person, I order online a lot, and I love getting new stuff into my mailbox, and stuff that is packaged well just makes me happy. And so, being able to provide that for people is great.
Yeah.
Little surprises in the mail each month. I love that.
I mean, I think it's really smart, especially, I mean, not to keep bringing the pandemic into it, but I mean, again, at a time like this, getting mail, like a correspondence from like this artist whose work you love. I mean, like, I guarantee you that's some warm and fuzzy feelings waiting to happen.
Yeah, it has extra meaning. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to jump into your latest project just to close. And your latest project just wrapped is November, the final volume of your image book with Matt Fraction and Matt Hollingsworth and another Kurt Ankeny. Okay. And it was about 3 women whose lives intersected over one fateful day and night in November. It wrapped. It was I literally just read the finale and it was excellent. It dropped a couple months back. I want to say it was your longest project page wise. I don't know that for sure, but I feel like it was.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. The Windhaven that I did with George R. R. Martin may have been about the same length, but it was a long time ago. But yeah, recently it's my longest running book.
So I'm curious as to it was a very interesting project in a number of ways. It was you and Matt, who were pals, like doing something different story wise, but also in this graphic novella format, kind of a sequential series of graphic novellas. It was, it sounds like it was the one where you kind of injured your wrist during it too. I mean, I imagine there's a lot of different things you learned over this experience. Were there any important lessons for you as an artist or as a creator, as just somebody who's thinking about your career as you took on the beast that was November?
Um, yes. So not as I took it on, but after the fact, I there are different type of books. There are books that will sell,
Hmm.
that are very uh, you know, commercial, and there are books that are maybe different, and those are going to be harder to sell.
Right.
That is my lesson from it all. November is an incredible book, and I'm not talking about the art. I'm talking about the writing and what Matt has done with the structure of this book is absolutely mind blowing. I've never read anything like it. Uh, it's in those characters. I mean, the most probably one of the most alive people I've ever seen on a page. And but it was a weird book. It was a weird format, not weird but different. And it was a story that you had to give the benefit of the doubt to.
Hmm.
Because when you read volume 1, you're like, I really don't know right now where this is going, but I'm going to trust you guys and I'm going to read volume 2, 3, and 4. And you need to read the 4 volumes for it to make sense. So, in that sense, that is not a very commercial approach. There's no true hook after volume 1.
Hmm.
So, that's what I learned. It was a big lesson. We didn't sell as much as we'd hoped for, and as much as I think the book deserves.
Sure.
And again, I'm not talking about the art, I'm talking about the writing. I think it's one of the best things that Matt has written, and that's saying something. Um, and yeah, and like we released 3 or 4 books in a pandemic when shops were closed, so it didn't help. Uh, but I'm extremely proud of the work that we have done. And one of the other lesson that I've learned on this book is that um, being in awe of the talent of the writer you're working with makes a huge difference. Like I really, really wanted to impress Matt with my pitch because I have like a well of respect for him, for his work, and I really wanted to be up to the task that we have set ourselves up to. So that I'm not gonna do any books with a writer that I don't like have huge of respect for because it makes me a better artist.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that I just think that, you know, when you work with somebody like Matt, who not only is going to deliver a story that you're going to connect with and characters you're going to love, yeah, I mean, for you, not for me as the reader. I also love those things, but it's, obviously different for you. But the other thing is, I imagine that in some ways, like because he looks at things in such a singularly Matt sort of way, I imagine that he's challenging you in a way that maybe other writers wouldn't. And in kind of pushing you to be, I'm not saying that like November pushed you towards like the YouTube channel, but I imagine that having to work on a long form project where you have so many, like, such a unique project, maybe it made you start thinking about comics differently and different approaches and solutions that could be put onto the page. And that's powerful.
Definitely, it has opened my mind on what writing of comics can be, how different it can be, how imaginative it can be, and that has made me even more curious about writing. And also, when I did the Kickstarter for my new art book, I for the first one we had a November commentary edition.
Hmm.
So if you remember, it was a book. It was the first volume, so 60 pages of art in black and white, with not lettered, but with my thoughts and like tips and on the pages and why I did what I did. And I had been so incredibly interested in the process, in Matt's process of writing November, Then for the second volume, I asked him to do the volume 2 of November, but from his point of view, from, explaining the writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it would be interesting because I had seen his notebooks, and I knew that people had to see some of this. And so he did that, and you'll see when the November volume 2 commentary comes out, he has a way of thinking comics and thinking the page that is unlike anything I had imagined it could be. So it has definitely opened my mind in wanting me to study even more of that. Hence the YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
So the time working with him has challenged me, and I think it has made me even more in love with comics, if that was possible.
I love it. I will say too, the the idea that you don't want to work with writers that you aren't like connecting with or like passionate about and everything like that, but also like the idea that you have an idea of what will maybe succeed in comics. Those kind of fit into the larger idea of what you're talking about with like the YouTube channel and the art book and everything like that, where you have better control. And maybe, I don't know, do you feel like November in some ways reframed what you would say yes to in the future in terms of projects, like what you're looking to do as a creator?
Yeah, probably. Yes, absolutely. From all sorts of standpoints. I think it has made me more. I look at the writing closely,
Mm-hmm.
more closely than maybe I used to. And also, yeah, from a selling standpoint as well. Because it's important when you start a project to figure out, am I going to make a living out of this book or not? And if not, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't take this book. I should just be smart about everything else, So it has made me a bit more strategic in terms of my thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can I offer a suggestion going forward?
Please do.
You are really good at drawing dogs.
Dogs.
The dog at the end from with Emma Rose when she's
Oh,
living.
yeah.
Your dog had so much amazing life to it. It felt, I don't know. It like was like a combination of like old school animation with like what a dog actually is like. And after I finished the book, it was funny because I just like to post random panels and stuff on on the sketched Instagram of things that I really love, and I put a story up where I just was like, "This is a really good dog." I
Yeah,
love that dog.
I'm glad you picked up on what first. Thank you. I'm glad you picked up on the Disney animation because I grew up watching Disney. So yeah, if I'm gonna draw a dog, it is going to have some sort of Disney in it, and those pages were hard. Like, I'm glad it doesn't show, but it was hard.
What made it so hard?
The dog. It's really hard. Dogs don't move the same way that humans do.
No, and it's not like you have like, I don't think dogs really cooperate for like photo reference. If you decided to use that, you're like, okay, I need you to pose like this, and the dog's like, what? No, I'm a dog. I
Yeah,
just
I
do what I
have
want.
cats, so they're not much help.
Oh man, now I want you to draw a comic with cats because I have 2 cats and I feel like you would give proper treatment. Plus, tons of experience in Disney animation with excellent cats. So there is that.
Yeah, maybe, but gosh, it's too hard.
Too hard.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, Elsa, that is actually all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about your YouTube channel, the reframing of your career, November, dogs, and everything else. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, David. I had a great time. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with artist Elsa Charretier. You can find her on Twitter at @E_Charretier, on our YouTube channel, and on our Patreon at patreon.com/Elsa Charretier. Love Off Panel and want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating and review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel, and when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site, Sketched, at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content and its members-only forum. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking it on Facebook at /Sketched, that's SKTCHD, follow on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic, or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Scott Buon, Dr. Luke, Michael Tunk, Canadian by Proxy, Johnny Kanan, Zach Thompson, Bradley Roeder, Carl Troy, Megan Marsden, Brandon DePillis, Patrick Brower, Declan Shalvey, Dan Garino, Josh Williamson, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, SB, Antonio Offen, Nick Bennett, Daniel Whitfield, Scotty Young, Susanna Polo, Jeff Weira, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, AbductedTheComic.com, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Charlie Chu, Stephen Hole, Pensacola Pop Comics, Kim Eslam, Philip Myra, Christian Shelton, Kenny Porter, Chris Pacello, Torin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mizell, Danny Ollie, Paul Salate, Sakil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Leanna Kangas, Wesley Gift, Sean Kirkham, Alistair Ross, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwatt, Vita Ayala, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WMQ Comics, Akil Kokachi, Sean Pinello, Kent Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Rob Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Brendan Fletcher, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogert, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Braldy, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxwell, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Adam Heifel, Fiona Staples, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nicolo, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.